kick off, Emma?
Love to.
Yes, I think we shall. Alrighty, well, welcome everyone officially to tonight's tasting with Barrell Craft Spirits. I know it's technically pronounced barrel, but it sounds fancy in French when I put an accent on it, and it avoids the whole like who's on first joke. So I've been saying Barrell for years, but I'm sure obviously I should probably say barrel for this tasting. We're joined by an extra special guest, Nic Christiansen, who's the blender extraordinaire behind all of these releases, and we massively thank her for joining us for this virtual tasting. It is crazy early in the morning in Louisville, Kentucky, so she's doing an absolute solid by sharing her expertise with us this morning. She's also one of the most flavor talented people I've ever heard of, with a background in cocktails and sommelier qualifications and managing a high profile whiskey bar. I'm pretty sure there's nothing in the industry you haven't done. And she's probably got the most exciting job ever now, tinkering with different cask types and whiskeys to craft these delicious blends that we'll be tasting tonight. But I'll hand it over in a little bit. But before I get started, usual housekeeping to go over. We recommend having 6 glasses so you can go back and compare each dram whiskey. You really call American whiskey a dram. So you can go back and compare each if you have the glassware for it. If you don't, no worries. As usual, please do not drive after this tasting. Responsible drinking is always encouraged. All of our tastings are recorded as well. So for those who want to watch them back or who can't join us tonight, they'll be up on our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe, as the kiddies say. But yeah, with that, I think that's it from me. Without too much further ado, I'd love to introduce Nic Christiansen to talk us through the brand, Barrell, and what she does for the company. And might start with the first whiskey as well, so I've got something to drink while we're talking.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited. I've had a lot of experience in the past with different Australian whiskey fans who've come to see me at different times in my career, and I know that the Australian whiskey market is just like very passionate and into everything, and also some like the coolest people I've met during my time in the whiskey world are from Australia. So I'm very excited to do this. Hopefully I can get down there sometime soon and see you in person. But so I'm Nic Christiansen. I'm the blender and manager of blending operations at Barrell Craft Spirits. I've got batch 33 in front of you. So you guys can start tasting and nosing that. I'll just give a brief intro on the company for people that don't know us. So we were founded almost 11 years ago. We're coming up on 11 in September by Joe Beatrice. We were founded on principles of blending. So not building a distillery and creating the same distillate over and over. Instead, sourcing different barrels and different types of whiskey from different distilleries in order to create a new flavor profile that never existed, and come up with very unique blends that change over time. Everything has always been cask strength up until last year when we released our first non-cask strength product, Foundation. But for the first 10 years, everything was cask strength, and most of everything that we do will still continue to be cask strength. Our batches change every time we blend one. So you're tasting batch 33 right now. There were 32 before that, and they're all different and unique, and that's intentional. We want to look at our barrel inventory, see what we have, what can we put together that's new and exciting that we haven't done before, and we kind of call it our spice cabinet. So picking and choosing different barrels to add to the blend to create new flavors that make each batch different and interesting. So if you like batch 33, batch 34 is going to be a little bit different, but it's going to be exciting, and there might be one that kind of strikes your profile more than the others, but they're all going to have the same principles, and that is a very strong aroma, something that's exciting on the nose. And then on the palate, we want it to evolve and change. So on the front palate, it's going to taste one way, and then it's going to kind of evolve as you continue drinking it And then the finish is also going to be exciting, leading you to one another sip. So those are kind of core values with everything we make.
Yeah, cool. Please, everyone, pop your tasting notes in the chat. This is already on the nose, overwhelmed me. It's this frangipani kind of thing. You know, frangipani is like a sweet but not sweet flower. It's got that like funk to it, which I absolutely love. Ollie was asking how many barrels do you have to work with currently? Michael was making a joke. How many barrels do you have working with?
We have a very large barrel inventory, so around 8,000 barrels in our inventory or so. I don't know off the top of my head exactly, but it's around that number.
A whole heck of a lot.
And it wasn't always that case. Joe started the company on his own, and we were able to build our inventory over time. So some of those barrels have been in our inventory for years, and some we're purchasing as we go. So it really goes back and forth.
Yeah, cool. Chris has asked a question, which is kind of what I was gonna ask. So you call it your spice cabinet. Do you have a garlic powder? Something you put in everything. And yeah, Chris is saying what distillery is your favorite to work with, which I suppose is kind of the same. What's your garlic to put in that batch?
It definitely changes. So since we have so many barrels in our inventory, we're constantly pulling samples from those barrels and tasting them in that moment in time to see what's special. So it evolves. I know at one point we had these 9-year Tennessee barrels that had like this like super dark chocolate flavor with some toasty notes, and like they weren't amazing on their own, but when you added them to a blend, it was like something magical happened. Like all this like sweetness and fruit came up, and like baked goods, and we loved working with those barrels as a component in blends. And sometimes it's not just a single barrel grouping that we're using. Sometimes we make component blends, what we call. So it could be barrels from Indiana and Tennessee that put together have a strong like stone fruit flavor that we really like in blends. And so we create that component, and then that component is used in blends because of the different flavors that it brings out. And those just are constantly evolving. We're always looking for the next little, spice that we can bring out new flavors and kind of tease things out.
Yeah, cool. Glenn's asking, if you like a certain bottle, is it possible to search for another with a similar profile? Like, do you find that when you do these blends and have them, like, so obviously Seagrass blends are all going to be of a similar style, and the batch blends are all going to be in that same kind of vein? Is it easier to kind of like identify which array you should go for if you like a certain flavor profile?
So when we're creating our batches, we'll taste through the previous 4 or 5 when we're creating the next one, and we intentionally want them to be different. But throughout, the past 35 releases, 36 is the one we're bottling right now. There are definitely going to be some that have similar profiles. So we don't have anything right now like on the website that you can go and say like, if I like this one, I'll also like this one. But we do have detailed tasting notes of everything on the website. So if you that could be a good place to start. And sometimes people will just reach out and send us a message at our contact email, and we'll try to suggest the closest batch that's still available in the market too.
Yeah, cool. I'm wondering what everyone else thinks. I haven't seen any tasting notes, but I see a few nods. I see a few, like ooh faces, and you're like, ooh, this tickles me. One says very good.
Batch 33 is a blend of Indiana, Tennessee, Kentucky bourbons. The Indiana bourbon is 5, 6, and 7 years old. The Tennessee bourbon is 7 and 9. And the 9-year in here is some of those barrels that I was talking about earlier that kind of like our spice cabinet blend. And then the Kentucky bourbon is 6 years old in here. And the derived mash bill is something new that we've started doing. So since it's not all one mash bill, we've started adding a derived mash bill on our back label. So the derived mash bill on this one is 81% corn, 16% rye, 3% malted barley. So kind of a little bit in the traditional bourbon mash bill with maybe a little bit higher rye than some.
Yeah, cool. I always find higher rye bourbons tend to be my go-to because they're for some reason less spicy. I feel than like a straight rye or rye whiskey or something like that. I don't know. For me, wheated bourbons come out really spicy, but high rye bourbons are sweeter. I don't know. My palate's been all messed up by the amount of Scotch whiskey I drink, I think. But yeah, it's super delicious. This is great. I will say I've always been curious. The Tennessee whiskey distillery that you work with, are they more of a George or a Jack? I got the feeling they were more in the George category.
Oh, we can't say, but
No.
yeah, they are a Tennessee distillery that you've probably heard of.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I love that.
NDAs and things. So
Yeah, exactly.
but there are multiple distilleries in Tennessee that we work with, so it's not all from one distillery.
Oh, cool. Nice. Brock's wondering if you have any favorite of the batches of what we've just tried.
I have trouble picking favorites, but I think batch 24 was one of my favorites. And batch 35, which was our release last year, was one of my favorites that we've had in a long time. 33 and 32 kind of came out close together, and they were similar but different. And what I really liked about 33 is the mouthfeel. Just like it's kind of bourbon for everyone, just like very approachable, like very rich and creamy, and kind of gives you all of those traditional bourbon notes that you kind of want and expect from something. So those are all good. And then batch 36 we're bottling right now, so I'm always kind of focused on like the most recent blend too, but it is a very different blend than we've done in a while. It's 7.5 years at the youngest, and most of the blend is between 8 and 10 years old. So I'm really excited to get that one out.
Yeah, cool. We might move on to whiskey number 2, and
Okay.
I'll ask some more questions. So a question for me, do you find that your stocks that you have available to blend are just naturally getting older, and as the company has gone on, it's kind of like, oh yeah, like we happen to be bottling more older sort of stock?
Not necessarily. It's more strategic in kind of pulling those samples as the barrels are aging, and then earmarking certain barrels to continue to age so we can have older barrels available for certain products.
Cool. Nice. Got 2 Chris questions. One was how did batch 33 come about? Were you targeting a profile, or was it, you just had a bunch of interesting casks?
Yeah, batch 33, we were kind of targeting that like sweeter, more round, traditional bourbon flavor profile, but it sometimes comes out of like as we're tasting the samples and we're putting lab blends together, and it was just we found a combination that was kind of bringing those notes out. So wanted to run with that and kind of pull out more of those flavors. And when we're blending, we start out in the lab with an idea sometimes, and other times we just start tasting things and kind of creating different lab blends to see what flavors we can bring out. And as we're working in the lab, coming up with the blend, we've finalized, like, this is the lab blend. I take that to the distillery, start dumping the barrels. I still dump the barrels separately, the different components separately, pull samples, come back to the lab, make sure that the flavor profile is going the way we want it to, and then start blending in the tanks. And once we get about 90 to 95% of the tank blended, come back in the lab, and we kind of start over at that point, because there's a lot of nuance that can really come through in the last 5% of the blend. So we do a lot of blind tasting at that point, different adjustments, and try to, bring out as much flavor as we can.
Yeah, cool. All right. So Scott's saying the Vantage has a more oily, creamy mouthfeel. I completely agree, but that spiciness comes at me as well. So tell us about the Vantage and like the composition and the idea behind this bottling.
Yeah, Vantage is so it's a part of our ongoing products. We remake it. Everything is cask strength, so the proof will still change, but we blend to a flavor profile. So you'll be able to get this ongoing. The conception of Vantage is kind of a long story, but it's one of the things that I love about what we do. So we're constantly doing R&D on different types of barrel finishes, different types of oak finishes, different blends, and we're tracking those over time. And sometimes, it's only 1 or 2 barrels that we're kind of testing. So Vantage started before I started with the company. In theory, we didn't know what the end product was going to be, but some of the R&D started. And I'm almost 5 years with the company. So it's probably 7 years ago that some of this R&D started, and that was with toasted American oak barrels. So it was really just, if we put these mash bills from these distilleries in these barrels, like, what's going to happen and how's it going to evolve over time? So that was a question. We were, pulling samples and trying to figure it out. And then we did the same thing with French oak barrels and Mizunara oak barrels. So at first, it wasn't necessarily planned for them all to come together into one product. It was just, what type of flavor can we get? And then, we started, the whiskey had been in there longer. We're like, this is really good. We were playing around in the lab, like, could we create a blend, a bourbon with 3 different oak finishes and allow each of those oak influences to show through in the blend, but not overpower each other and not overpower the base whiskey. So it took years to develop on the back end before we knew what we were doing. And then once we, decided we wanted to do this, it was also, could we keep going and could we recreate this? So we have to start sourcing more barrels, putting more whiskey in those barrels, and kind of plan it out. So a lot went into Vantage to start. And that's that's one of the most exciting things for me about this blend is how much time went into it. And now I think it all worked out. We won number 3 on Whiskey Advocate's Best Whiskeys of the Year when we released it. So that was a really big win for us, and we're excited to get it out there and keep making it.
Yeah, cool. Michael's saying it's delicious, cool mint bourbon. That is absolutely what I was thinking. It's like Tic Tacs almost. That like flavor of spearmint, peppermint kind of thing. And obviously peppermint in America and Australia are 2 very different flavor profiles, which is devastating. I would kill for some proper candy canes from America every year, but can't get them. But yeah, definitely that.
What's your peppermint like?
Sadder. It doesn't have that oily sweetness to it. So and like we don't have peppermint, we have mint. So it's slightly different. I love a peppermint hot chocolate from Starbucks, but I can't get it here in Australia outside of Christmas time because it's the wrong mint. So, but super fresh, super interesting. Scott was saying that the tears or the legs on the glass are a lot more prevalent in the Vantage, which is really cool. We got some amazing questions that came through as well, actually. Glenn was asking, how much does science come into the blending? Like, are you measuring the chemical compositions as well, like through mass spectrometry and whatnot, or is it mainly palate?
Yeah, so it's the question that gets asked often, like how much is science and how much is art, with a lot of things, and definitely with blending. We tend to lean more towards the artistic side. We don't have machines to process the liquid and figure out the composition. So we do it all by palate, and part of the reason is we're drinking it. It's our palates, but that's what you're going to be drinking too. You're not going to be able to analyze the whiskey and know exactly what compounds are in there. You're going to taste it, and you're going to, we want you to continue. We want you to enjoy it and continue to drink it. So we have a very small blending team. It's Joe Beatrice, our founder, Trip Simpson, our chief whiskey scientist, and me. So the three of us taste everything, and kind of our flavor profiles, like we know what the other one likes, and then when we're tasting together, there's usually one person that kind of balances between them, which is usually me, and try to get the best flavor in there. So and we do all of our sampling at cask strength as well, so we're not cutting down at all. We're bottling at cask strength, so we want to taste it the same way that you're going to taste it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and I know that can be really tricky with like particularly what different people like as well. Like Anthony and Amanda in the group here were with me for some other American whiskey tastings that I hosted, and I was like, for me, American whiskey either tastes like pickles or it tastes like marshmallows, and I don't like pickles. So I'm like, I'm always having to like check myself and be like, no, this is a good whiskey. I just don't like it because it tastes like pickles. Yeah.
Palates are so interesting, and I love like the cultural differences too. It's like your peppermint's different than our peppermint, and that's there's probably hundreds and hundreds of those things that are different to your palate than they are to our palate. But ultimately, it's flavor, so it's like if you enjoy it, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. Chris has a bit of a tricky one. So he's seen some reports regarding the American whiskey market. How is that going? Obviously, in Australia, we're kind of hitting a peak with distilleries on every block here in Australia. I think you've got slightly more space to work with in America than we do, though I think Australia might be the same size as the USA. Brock might have to back me up on that one or tell me I'm wrong. But yeah, do you find that there's like a really massive amount of distilleries now, and is that a good thing for you, or is that a tricky thing for you?
Yeah, I think the bourbon boom has just been going strong since around 2011 or so, and nothing's gonna grow forever like that. It's just it's been a really good thing, and I think a lot of good brands and new brands have come out. A lot of new innovation has come out of that. But yeah, it's gonna slow down at some point because it's just been going at a very fast accelerated rate, especially since 2020. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a slowdown. I don't think it's going to be like a crash. I think we're still going to keep going strong. It's just kind of figuring out what the new level is of consumption and the product out there. So a lot of new distilleries out there. I think the market's still trying to figure out how many we actually need, how many we can sustain. So I think it's going to be an interesting couple of years, but I think we're figuring it out. Just, it all takes time.
Yeah.
But yeah, cheap Pappy coming your way. I'm not sure about that. I'm sure Pappy.
Hey, we can dream, okay? Everyone can dream of cheap Pappy, but Yeah, so yeah, like Michael said, we're seeing a bit of a consolidation. We're in the early stages of a lot of the smaller players starting to drop out of the market now, but it's mostly happening with gin in Australia. We've got like 400 gin distilleries, which is insane. So you know, look, the power of middle-aged white women to buy gin. I love it. My sister-in-law is one of those people. But yeah, unfortunately, it can't sustain everyone forever. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of years, especially with global movements and stuff like that. But yeah, we might move on to what I'm personally most excited for, which is the whiskey number 3, the Barrell. I'm gonna keep making that mistake. The Seagrass. I would love to know how this came about, because I cannot rack my brain for any distilleries that make or anywhere that makes apricot brandy in America. I think they're mostly European companies that make apricot brandy and stuff.
Yeah, so Seagrass is I think it's a fun story of the inception of Seagrass. So Seagrass falls into the lineup with Vantage and Dovetail, which we're not tasting today. So these 3 products, they're all ongoing products that we blend over and over to a certain flavor profile, but the proof will change each blend. And they all have 3 different barrel finishes. Seagrass is a rye with the apricot brandy finish, Madeira finish, and Martinique rum or rum agricole finish. So Joe Beatrice, he had the name Seagrass in his head for a long time after we created Dovetail. So he knew he wanted it to be a rye whiskey blend with 3 barrel finishes, and he wanted to be called Seagrass. He's from the Northeast, and the Northeast coast is like, it's cool up there. There's lots of wind coming off of it. And he wanted to evoke this feeling of being on the coast and the coastal air coming to land, the wind blowing through, your body and through the grass, and you're getting a mixture of like salinity from the ocean, but also like these herbal grassy notes from everything like blowing in the wind. And that's what he told us, like as a blending team. He's like, okay, let's get it done. So easy enough, right? But what I think it forced us to do was to open our minds to like any possibility and get more creative than we would have been if he gave us if we had another like way to come to this blend. So it took a long time, and it took a lot of R&D and figuring out what types of barrels are out there for finishing and what we can get a hold of and things like that. But it was kind of around like lockdowns weren't happening anymore, but it was like right after that, and we had spent like a couple late nights till midnight in the lab, like just like getting things done. And it was just like testing things and trying different types of flavor combinations. And that's with the rye whiskey base blend as well as with the barrel finishing. So just trying to really get it right and see what we can come up with. And we probably tried 100 different combinations before we landed here. And you mentioned I come from like the cocktail world, so like rum agricole, like I love it. It's kind of nerdy. It's not for everyone. Apricot brandy, most people in the States haven't had it, but they understand apricots and the fruitiness, so that's not too weird. But a lot of people in the States also don't know what Madeira is. So it's kind of one of those things when we came up with the final blend, like as a team, we were just like, we love this. Like this is perfectly balanced with these strong fruity notes, but also like this herbal grassy stuff that comes in there. There's like fennel and plum and apricot and white grapefruit. And I remember we were standing in the lab, we're drinking it, and I was on the phone with one of our team members too. We're just like talking, and we're like, well, we love it. Hopefully, people will enjoy it and understand it, but it might be too nerdy for people. And so then it was like released, and we were out there, and we thought it might be too nerdy, but it actually like blew up, and people just like from all different types of backgrounds, different palate preferences, like it's become one of our best-selling products, and very, very approachable, which was not what we expected, because we thought it would be too weird, but it was the opposite.
Yeah, it's just beyond. I remember the first time I saw the casking written on the bottle, I was like, I need this in my face right now. This sounds like the most bizarre, exciting thing. I'm a massive fan of a Charlie Chaplin cocktail, and this just tastes like a Charlie Chaplin, but in whiskey form, which makes it even better almost. But yeah, everyone's wow, absolutely delicious. Brock was saying it was Fred Minnick's #2 whiskey of the year. If you don't know Fred Minnick, he's an amazing writer in the American whiskey scene. But only needs more seagrass in his life. Scott says that he's running out. He's running out of the fancy label, the gray label one. Scott says the seagrass smoke's interesting. How does the standard compare with the gold and silver versions? Chris is asking. The silver is aged 16 years, isn't it? Is that the main difference?
Yeah, so the gray and gold lines of Seagrass and Dovetail, age is the biggest thing, but also we spend more time kind of pulling samples from the barrels, and pulling the whiskey from the barrels at the optimal time to create what we believe is worth the higher price point and the packaging. And Gray Label 16 Seagrass is like one of my favorites, the things that we've ever done.
It's that TikTok recently was like, do the weird thing, say the weird thing, and it's like, this is the weird thing, do it. It's it's amazing. We don't have a lot of regulation around whiskey production here in Australia, so we've had like a lot of experimentation and like a lot of fun stuff that wouldn't be able to get the opportunity to do otherwise. So it's really wonderful to see other brands. I suppose you kind of skirt around the rules where it says like, it's a rye finished in these, it's a bourbon finished in these.
Yeah, I haven't tried a lot of Australian whiskey, but I have heard that there's a lot of really, really great whiskey distilleries down there. So I need to try more. It's not something you see here very often.
Yeah, we've got a lot of native trees and native woods that some distilleries have used. So red gum, for example, has been a relatively popular one, which is really cool. And there's also jarrah wood, but distilleries I know who've tried using jarrah wood have given up very quickly because it leaks like crazy, and they're like, I will not have any whiskey left in it by the time it's ready to bottle. So
that's important.
Yeah, kind of is, just a little bit. So and this is a distillery that was their stuff's not cheap. So I was like, oh, you don't really want to waste that much liquid onto the floor. So yeah, absolutely amazing. And I think someone was saying go back in for the nose, Michael, go back in for the apricot on the nose once it's empty. It just reminds me of those little lumps that you get. I don't know, as a kid, but yeah, so cool. Well, we might move back towards some single barrels to keep us going tonight. Now, Brock, you might be able to answer this. Is the Z2 D2 the tip jar?
Yeah, correct. That was It was coming out of COVID, and we that was when Orson partnered with Tip Jar, and Tip Jar, Nick, is like a charity that helps the hospitality industry. So we thought that was kind of just good timing. You know, hospitality industry coming out of COVID was really obviously going through a tough time. So they do things like training and upskilling and helping with all aspects of, you know, people looking to get in or stay in the hospitality industry. So it was kind of a nice little tie-in at that time of everybody's lives.
Yeah, that's nice.
I completely forgot to introduce Brock tonight.
Yeah.
Little late, but
Hanging out.
so Brock's part of Whiskey Hunt Australia. He does a lot of barrel picks for Australia. He kind of kicked it off in the sort of just before COVID. Has brought some amazing stuff in. He's also one half of the Awesome Spirits gang who import barrel into Australia. So Whiskey List, we work very closely with those guys. So thank you, Brock, for introducing this amazing brand to Australia. It's kind of all your fault.
Yeah, it was cool. I think it was just before COVID we initially reached out to the team over there. So, you know, it was like, you know, we put a list of our top 3 brands that we were most excited about, and this one, especially Barrel, the way, you know, doing unique stuff that was definitely not your typical sort of realm, I guess. So it was really cool that they were, you know, interested and excited enough to reach out on the other side of the world and get some new whiskey fans.
Yeah, it's such a cool thing, and it kind of leads into another question I have. I'm not going to have any questions left for an interview later. But how do you find it is being like an independent bottler? Because essentially that's what Barrel is. Is there like, what's it like for you guys in the scene? Because obviously most people do have that dream of opening their distillery and producing their own whiskey, but that's, you know, not the goal for Barrel.
Yeah, I think we're kind of in a different place than a lot of other, you know, brands who are doing similar things, just because we started so long ago, and you know, it was kind of like peak bourbon time when Joe started the company, where it was booming, but still everything was available. And when we started the company, you know, cash strength wasn't that common as well. So kind of leaning into that, and then, you know, building the brand over time. So where we are now, it's, you know, we have our own facility. We just opened in September. We were operating in another facility, but we built this one. It's purpose built. So we're probably the largest purpose built blending whiskey house in the country, in the United States, which is pretty cool. And there are a lot of other brands that are coming up and kind of doing a similar thing, but we've just been able to kind of gradually get to where we are, and work with other, you know, other distilleries that are doing distillate. But we have 4 6,000-gallon blending tanks here and 4 10,000-gallon blending tanks here, which is a lot of capacity for blending. And we have 2 bottling lines, so we can do a lot. We've got a lot of opportunity here, and it's also going to allow us to do some contract work and things and stuff as well.
Yeah, cool. Is Chris is asking, is there much of a history of blending whiskey in America? Beyond, I suppose, distilleries getting MGP for pre-release.
So it has a bad history in the United States only because the context is not actually accurate. So blended whiskey was a legal term that meant you could blend in non-whiskey to the whiskey. So it actually lowered the quality of it. And so for a long time, people saw us as blenders and thought that we, were creating things that were not to the standard of regular whiskey blending. So that I think that has been changing a lot over the past 10 years. But it's definitely taken some time and other brands to be doing that too and speaking about it. And that's one of the reasons why we've always openly talked about how we're blenders. Scotland's been doing this forever, and there's nothing, it doesn't lessen the quality of the product. It's all still straight whiskey going into the blends. But yeah, there is a category within the US that's blended whiskey, and we probably want to stay away from it.
Bit of a Frankenstein's monster kind of. Yeah, fair enough. Michael's getting sandalwood on the nose. I am now that my glass is empty, but when it was full, it was raspberry pink marshmallows galore. Like specifically the pink ones. Ollie's wondering what a typical day looks like for you as a blender.
Well, every day is different. That's for sure. It depends on what we're working on, and I do have to split my time with the lab, which we're in right now. Maybe when we're finished, I'll show you around the lab a little bit because it's my favorite room. But I also have to, do all the fun Excel sheets and planning and costing things out and, those things. But when we're working on a blend, or I've got samples that I want to taste through, I'll usually work on the computer for the first like 30 minutes to an hour, and then I try to get into the lab pretty quickly to do some tasting. My palate is typically the freshest in the morning, kind of after I've been up for 2 or 3 hours, but I haven't had anything, haven't had lunch or anything yet. So I always like to do that. That could be a quick, 15 to 30 minutes, depending on what we're working on. But definitely if it's something longer, I want to try to knock it out before lunch. And then after lunch, do some more kind of meetings or office work. And then after the palates kind of calm down after lunch, if I need to do another tasting, I'll come back in and do that. And when we're tasting things, we're not trusting our palate off of one day at one time, because our palates are always constantly evolving. You're eating different things. You are as well. And your palates change throughout the day. So when we're creating a product, we're going to taste it, early in the morning for 5 days in a row. And then we're also going to taste it in the afternoon for 5 days in a row, and kind of make sure that we are getting the right thing. So it really just depends. I also manage our barrel program. So sometimes I'm working with our sales team on different barrel picks, different things that we can do in the market, managing all the samples and getting those out, and manage the blending team who actually dumps the barrels and pulls the samples for me and puts those blends together. So a lot of coordinating with different people, getting things, kind of pulling things together to either work on blends or test things or get samples out in the market for private barrels.
Cool. I mean, like, it's always that thing. It sounds so wonderful and magical, like you just sit there and you drink all day, but there is actual other components to it. I think the more time I've spent talking to blenders and master blenders, the more I'm like, oh, this is not as exciting as what's written makes it seem. But yeah, we would definitely love at the end of the tasting a little tour of the blending room. I have to say, it's the prettiest blending room I've ever been in. I've seen some that are stark white to avoid any distractions for your palate, which sure. Sure.
There's definitely a lot of white. The other wall's white, but yeah, we designed this lab based on our last lab that we had, and it's great. It's just like a lot of room, natural light, Trip and I like to listen to classical music, modern classical music when we blend sometimes. So it's just like kind of just stepping into the zone and just like going with it.
Yeah, I love that. Michael's looking forward to visiting in August. He's going to be over in the States over then. But Ollie wonders when the lab opens, asking for a few friends. But yeah, I would absolutely love to come visit the blending lab myself one day. It's one of those. I feel like it's a very magical, almost holy space in any distillery or independent bottler. It's just like, this is where the magic happens.
Yeah, that's what I say on the, if I'm walking people through, like, this is where the magic happens.
Yeah.
And it really is.
Amazing. We might move on to whiskey number 5. I'm just conscious of time. It's late for us and you've got to get back to your regular scheduled programming for the day, I assume. Now, Brock and Ollie, I believe this is the Whiskey Show rye, is it? Yeah. So yeah, 7-year-old rye bottled for the virtual USA Whiskey Show that we held during COVID. I think it was in 2020. We had to pivot to virtual and do everything online and send out tasting kits and whatnot. And that feels like so long ago, but also still fresh in everybody's memories. I don't know what it was like for you guys over in the States, but yeah. So
I'm happy to be out of it.
yeah, I live in Melbourne, which was the most locked down city, I think, which look, it was raining half the year, so it's not like we could go anywhere anyway. But Chris has another great question. What's the kind of biggest or costliest mistake? Do you guys have mistake batches where it's just like, oh no, something's gone horribly wrong? Does that happen? Hopefully not super often ever, but
Yeah, so one, like kind of how I mentioned, when we start working on blends, we're pulling a ton of samples, we're testing things constantly. So part of my job is to make sure we don't have any mistake blends. And another thing that kind of like a way of thinking of blending when I'm going through things is sometimes, like when you start with a lab blend and then you go into the distillery and start dumping barrels and combining things, they can change, because when we're doing the lab blends, we're pulling, composite samples from barrels from the same lot numbers, but it doesn't mean that there's not going to be like a bad barrel in there that we missed, or a few barrels from that group that like just have a completely different flavor profile. So that's why we dump everything separately, bring them back to the lab to make sure that flavor profile still matches. But things do change, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just reframing your mind to maybe, how could I eliminate this flavor that wasn't there, now it is, or how can I bring in some other barrels with a different mash bill to kind of accentuate, like together they make a better flavor. So I like to say that I let the whiskey speak to me. So I'm not trying to force the whiskey into any box. I want it to be good, and I want it to have all the tasting points that I mentioned earlier, like the mouthfeel, the aroma, the finish, but I'm not necessarily trying to be like, you have to be this. So I think it allows me to not run into those issues because of all the testing along the way, but also sometimes if I let the whiskey speak to me, the end result is actually a lot better than the original lab blend, because I found something interesting that like kind of became a puzzle and I have to figure it out, and then it leads to like a better thing at the end. So luckily I have not had any big costly blending mistakes, and I'm gonna try to keep that record.
5 years is, going strong. But yeah, super cool. Brock, you were asking if it was a 95% rye, 5% corn or malted
Yes.
barley rye single barrel?
Yes, it's 95 rye, 5 malted barley.
Yeah, cool.
This was our very first for the Whiskey List American barrel pick that we ever did. So we've prior to that only done scotches. So it was exciting for us as a business to get into that category. Obviously, we did it for the show. But yeah, I remember Brock sent us a few samples, both of ryes and bourbons, and we fell in love with all of them, which was firstly a surprising fact, because you do these barrel picks and there's one or two in the room that you think about, oh, they're okay, or the middle's not working there, or the finish or the nose or something's just not right. But all the samples I remember, just trying to find my notes, that they're on here somewhere in the spreadsheet. But the bourbon we picked was a Tennessee one from memory, a 10-year-old. And this rye was the MGP 7-year-old, and that it just was bright. It had a bit of spice in there, and it just worked. But for me, the reason why I loved it so much, it makes a killer old fashioned. Just like it just works so well. If you're partial for an old fashioned, this is the rye for me, at least. That sort of knocked it over across all the other samples. We chose it for that reason.
Yeah, and I don't have this sample in front of me because we were out of it at the distillery, but the 7-year 95.5 rye single barrels that we did, they're just one of the things that I love about them as a whole is they've got that like spicy, like spearmint-y like component to them, but then there's always like a ton of fruit kind of like on top of that. So it's like this like juicy, like fruity kind of structure with the rye, minty kind of spice behind it.
Yeah, it's got that like almost that feel of biting into a grape, that like little burst of tangy, fruity, sweet kind of sweetness sort of thing. Chris is asking Oliver what his old-fashioned recipe is, but I think more importantly, Nic, as a former bartender as well, though nowhere near as accomplished as you, what is your kind of go-to bitters for an old-fashioned? Like your go-to old-fashioned recipe?
I might be pretty boring with this, but like go-to old-fashioned is Angostura for the bitters. I do a 2-to-1 ratio Dem syrup, and a bar spoon of Dem, 2 ounces of whiskey, and depending on the whiskey, I might do an orange zest and a lemon zest, or I might just do one or the other. But standard is orange zest and lemon zest spritzed over top. That's like my classic old fashioned. Sometimes if there's a whiskey that kind of could be interesting with another type of bitters, like I'll experiment and do something different. But yeah, I'm kind of basic with my old fashioned.
No, I love that. I assume Dem syrup is Demerara sugar syrup.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. I was like, thought I'd clarify for everyone. Brock's asking if it's a bottled and bond or a cask strength whiskey for the old fashioned.
Cask strength for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Old fashions are one of those things. I used to make them and I would put them down at the table and I'd be like, I'm just letting you know this is quite strong. I make mine stronger because it's on ice, so it's going to dilute. So if it's not quite ready for you yet, wait a few minutes and it'll be at the right drinking, dilution for you. So like there's nothing worse than getting served a watery old fashioned. You're just like, I have to chug this in like 5 minutes, otherwise it's not going to be anywhere near as enjoyable.
That unfortunately happens too often.
Yeah, 100%.
One of the tricks I actually learned in your bar, Emma, is put your ice in your glass, obviously, but then use different ice when you're mixing it in your containers, and then you're not ruining your ice in your glass and then transfer it across. So you want to chill your old fashioned so it lasts longer. And then I'm lazy. I use dehydrated oranges because it's just easier.
No, we gotta get you on that fresh orange peel. But yeah, no, it's absolutely true. Is the ice that you're using to mix your cocktail is already wet and it's already starting to melt. So you don't want to put melty ice with your drink because it's just going to melt even quicker. You want to put it over fresh ice so that it's like that fresh ice has to kick into the melting process. But yeah, Brock, have some class, freeze your glass. I love that. Frozen glasses as well. Yeah, Michael, I'm on your side. I tend to do Angostura and orange bitters. But if I'm feeling fancy, I'll do black walnut and orange bitters for an American whiskey old fashioned, just because I like the nutty sweetness that it provides. But yeah, there's a big wide world of bitters out there for old fashions. There's no point in ever having a boring old fashioned. There's a bar in Melbourne that has 300 different bitters types on the back bar. Like they've got a whole 3 shelves dedicated to it. So, and like Scott said, Gospel Distillery, who make like a South Carolina style American whiskey style, but it's not bourbon, it's not rye. They make their own bitters as well, which is super duper cool. Well, I think we should probably move on to the last whiskey of the evening as well. So whiskey number AJV9 private release. So this is also a batch of a couple of different whiskeys blended.
Yeah, so our private release program is our single barrel program, but we create blends and then put those blends into a finishing cask and let it sit for a period of time and then before bottling. So this one is kind of a cool set of casks that we used. We partnered with GD Vara on this. They're a Barolo producer in Italy. And one of the really cool things about working with them is it's like a younger generation of the family that is running the winery and kind of making new Barolo, as in like not following the standard tradition of Barolo, but still making really, really good Barolo. And we had a call with them before deciding to work with each other. And the way they speak of the winery there was like really, really cool. And like the different locations, like having like they relate their wine to music. So it was like this wine has like, this like rock feel, and then this wine has like this like kind of more classical laid back like chill vibe. And it was I wished I had recorded that it wasn't an interview, it was a Zoom. I wish I'd recorded that because I didn't write down all of the notes that they were getting from the wineries based on music, but it was really, really cool way to think about it. And so then I took those kind of like quick notes that I took and tried to pair whiskey with the barrels based on kind of like the vibe of them. So this is one of those barrels. I think it's a blend of whiskey and bourbon and rye in the base blend. And then we finished it in the barrels for about 3 months before pulling it out and bottling.
Yeah, cool. So Mike got a question ages ago, and I thought I'd save it for like this kind of batch blend. When you create these batches, do you attempt to like target a standardized kind of core flavor profile identity, or is the idea that you do want each batch to be distinctly different from each other batch?
So when we're blending them, we'll blend them in like lots or groups. So within the, if we're doing 100 barrels at a time, within those 100 barrels, there's probably going to be similar flavor profiles throughout. But each blend is distinctly unique. So I create component blends, and they're all in separate totes. And then I take them to the lab, come up with the percentages for each barrel, and then my distillery team will recreate those blends by the barrel based on weight. So they have hoses hooked up like everywhere and all these totes around, and it's time consuming and not the most efficient way to do it, but it does allow me to create truly unique base whiskey that goes into each blend, each barrel.
Yeah, cool. Brock was wondering if there was a base age range on this release.
This one was, I believe it was 5 to 14.
So widespread. Ooh. And Scott was asking, when you do these blends, are they primarily going into refill, new work, or then are they just going straight into those more experimental casks, depending on what it's destined for, I suppose?
It depends. Sometimes it's a first fill barrel, sometimes it'll be a second or third fill barrel. It really that also creates some flavor differentiation when we're using or creating them and showing them in a barrel selection. So a little bit of everything.
Yeah, cool. Oh, amazing. It's it feels like you get to write like your own book, and you get to free for all isn't the right phrase, but it's kind of like a choose your own adventure opportunity with each of these batches.
Yeah.
Super cool. Well, Ollie wanted to remind me, he's ducked off for whatever, but Ollie wanted to remind me that we are doing a discount for everyone here tonight. We've got 20% off the barrels that we have in stock. The code is BCS20, or you can copy that little whiskey link. But what I might do is I might run the poll. I know Scott's already given his number one, but I will launch the poll so we can have a conclusion on what is the pick of the night. And now I'm not sure, Brock and Nick, you guys might be able to see how people are voting. It's like horse racing. It's very exciting seeing all the numbers and votes move. But yeah, so we're gonna got the poll going to pick your top two. You don't have to pick just one. You can pick top two. I'm sure Scott's only picking the Seagrass from the notes he's given, but yeah, super excited to see probably what comes second realistically. But oh sweet, Ollie has shared the website link that actually works, because I don't know how technology works apparently. But we might give it a few more minutes for the poll. If anyone has any other questions for Nick, please pop them through now.
And I can walk around and show you the lab too. Well,
yes, that would be amazing.
So this is as if you came through the door. So we've got 2 tables. They're both glass tables that you can write on. So when we're blending and tasting, sometimes the table's just full of samples and we can write on it and keep track of everything. Got tons of samples. It's our DMA to proof all our everything. And then we've got just a whole hallway nook of different types of samples that we've pulled, and we go through and taste them and and reference them when we're blending.
Yeah, wow. That is like, oh, that just looks like fun time science class. I love it. Michael's wondering if you have any cellar door exclusive bottles. I'm sure he's already thinking about the room in his suitcase.
And then we also have a little speakeasy off.
Wow. Secret whiskey rooms. That is
Yeah, we will probably have some distillery exclusives. We haven't done any yet, but they are in the works that we will only sell here and release in small quantities.
yeah, cool. And one last question from Chris before I show the poll results. How do you keep your palate fresh?
Being very strategic with tasting times and how much I'm tasting. And I don't like I love spicy food, but I don't eat spicy food at work. Try not to. And being strategic about how much like I smell more than I taste for sure. And then when I do taste, I take you know, the smallest taste that I can possibly taste to not overwhelm my palate, especially at cask strength. It can definitely be a lot. If there are days where it's like this is going to be like a long tasting session, I'll do it, but then I always go back another day to make sure that, you know, my palate, I was tasting the right thing. So it's kind of have a rhythm with it, but it definitely takes time to like figure out what the best thing for you is, because everybody's different. So try to not have strong flavors during the day and taste at different times and multiple days.
Yeah, that's really great advice. I always think it's try not to change your routine too much. I knew a girl who had an amazing palate. She smoked, but she smoked every day. And so when she stopped smoking, she was like, everything tastes different. What's happened, you know? And I would always have coffee before I drank whiskey. So if I didn't have coffee, everything would taste slightly different. So, but yeah, definitely being cautious and considerate about what you're having and whatnot is a really, really great idea. Scott's wondering quickly, if you have hand fills at the distillery, not landfills.
Like fill your own bottles.
Yeah.
Not yet. It is something that we are discussing and trying to figure it out. So we currently are not open for tours at the moment to like the general public. You know, we built this facility and we wanted to get it up and running and stuff before we started that. So all of that will hopefully be coming soon. And we at some point will have fill your own bottle as an option, but we're still working through those logistics and when we don't know when it will be available yet. Hopefully soon.
Yeah, cool. Hopefully in time for when Michael is in the state. But amazing. So I will drum roll to a result that nobody is surprised by. The Seagrass being the clear winner of the evening. And then the private release coming second, and then a mini split between the 7-year-old Vantage and the batch. The tip jar didn't get as much love. I loved that. So but I can't vote. So but yeah, thank you again so much for your very, very generous time and your even more generous and incredible expertise in blending and what you do. It's absolutely amazing to see. We love to get people from like different you know, sectors of what makes a whiskey go into our bottles, and it was absolutely amazing to have you tonight our time, morning your time. But I think we will end the virtual tasting there. Brock and Nic, if you wanted to stick on for a little bit longer. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for all your wonderful questions as well. I love it when we can get engaged and really draw all the information possible out of our special guests. But Thank you, everyone, and we will see you at the next virtual tasting.
Thank you all.